to the Harmony Channel. I'm Jason Whitlock, your host. Thank you for joining me. You heard me here yesterday on the Harmony Channel talk about the Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, Erika Kirk feud situation, TPUSA versus Candace Owens. If you watch Fearless today, you heard me open the first hour of the show talking about the exact same situation, putting a different spin on it. You heard me share what's going on in my own private life as it relates to the Fearless Army prayer call and things like that, and what's been moving me. You've heard a lot from me over the past 2 days. Well, on this show, we also like to invite others into the conversation, get their reaction to what I've been saying. And just like last night, I had to sit through 20 guys that I've been praying with, question me and probe me about my position. Now we'll do some of that publicly with people that appear with me regularly on Fearless. So welcome Virgil, Anthony, Shemeka, and Dre Baldwin. And you know what, this time, I'm gonna go, we'll let Anthony fire first. And I got a broad question. You can go any direction you want. Maybe there's something interesting you want to put a perspective on what's been transpiring, or maybe you want to react to some of the things that I've said. Anthony, the floor is yours. Take the conversation wherever you'd like.
Oh, wow. I thought it was a question, so I just get to go where I want to go.
Yeah.
So my initial thoughts on all of this is being appropriate in what is said. The Bible tells us that even though we have the right to do things, Paul says everything is permissible, but everything is not beneficial. So just because I have the right to say something, according to our freedom of speech, does not mean that what I'm saying is right. And so I got to be mindful of that in what's going on. So when I see what Candace is doing and given her perspective, given her experience with Charlie and TPUSA and Erika, she's saying a lot of things. And I'm thinking, have we allowed Erika to grieve? And even with TPU, has TPUSA, has conservative media, if you will, have we allowed her to grieve in this process? And then before we start speaking and saying and leveling things, is what we're saying beneficial? Is it edifying? And then secondly, I appreciate your point that you were making today, which I kind of see alongside as well, which is in the nation's grieving point about this. In grief, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration. And you made the point about how, this alleged killer, is not enough. It hasn't soothed the frustrations of those who are upset over Charlie Kirk's assassination. So we need something, somehow, some way. And so all of this anger and all of this frustration is coming out in speech. And therefore, what is being said, it has to be said with the spirit of truth and with the spirit of grace.
Let me ask you a follow-up, Anthony, in terms of part of the argument I made today is that this kind of true crime, podcasting, documentary, it's become commonplace in American culture. And now that it seems to be affecting people in the political sphere and people in the faith sphere, that we seem to be far more sensitive to it and acting like, wow, I can't believe this is happening, when I take a step back and go like, no, this has been happening for more than 2 decades. It's just now happening to people that people in the Twitterverse, social media verse are more familiar with and have an affinity towards. But, the rest of America, or lower tier, less elite America, has been fodder for the Serial podcast, the Paradise Lost podcast, or documentaries, the Staircase. And again, the other point I made was like, man, I've listened to people speculate about all the people the Clintons have murdered, and no one bats an eye and no one utters a word of complaint. That's been going on forever. Your reaction to that?
Yeah, it is when people have access to everything like we do now, we just follow our way. Way leads on to way. So if the more access I have towards everything, you think about what used to happen back in the day, Jason, with media. There was a time where you would have a radio in the house and the family would gather around the radio to hear what's going on. And then subsequently later, there was a floor model TV. I grew up in a house with a floor model TV. Like we sat around and watched it. Later, you got radios in the car. Now, we're at a space where we have access to curate whatever we want to hear directly in our AirPods, and we can hear it as much as we want. And that just feeds on into, I can go as far as I want. And here's the thing, because of also where media has gone with access, back in your day, Jason, before something got out, you had to call a press conference or you had to schedule a film crew. You had to do all this kind of stuff. Now, people have their devices and I can set up my own podcast and I can just rip with whatever I want. And that's what we're consuming. And no one is stopping to discern what they're hearing. Nobody's stopping to discern whether it's true, whether it's accurate. We've got this society now that is, hey, we'll just, whatever you want to say, just say it and go with it and just put it all out there. There's a whole perspective on that. My perspective comes from a discerning one, which is everything, just because I can't hear it, I don't need to listen to everything. I don't need to hear everything that doesn't need to be put out there, because then now I can follow up with something that is a complete lie. And keep in mind, not only is God's word out there, but the enemy is putting his word out there. So I could be going flow and flow with whatever the enemy wants. And because it's interesting, it's tickling to the ear, it is salacious, I'm going to want more and more of it. And again, all of these things take us further and further from the foundation of the truth. So much so that when we hear truth, it's boring, uninteresting, or we disbelieve it.
Anthony, and guys, be patient. I'm going to get to you, but I got to ask this question of Anthony because of where I started the conversation today. Anthony leads our prayer call every Tuesday, has for 4 years. And Anthony was not on the Thursday night deal. It's the first time we did it, and it's just more of a conversation amongst men that are passionate about the show and the stuff that I talk about. The one concern I have coming out of that deal last night was that the conversation was pretty intense. People were very passionate. And if I have a concern, I get to the other side of it and say, man, they really pushed me and helped me formulate my ideas that improve the show and allow me to say even more interesting things on the show. But I sit there and go, from a spiritual perspective, we're arguing things passionately on a Thursday that have nothing to do with any of our salvation. And it's causing tension, potentially, and making people uncomfortable. And that's the thing I have to weigh about, is it worth it? Is it actually beneficial for me and this group to have these types of conversations?
Yeah, we have a good time in our prayer call, and we invite some more folk to come in. I think it's good in a spiritual relationship to be able to have spirited conversations. We're doing a deep dive in the book of Ephesians, and Paul uses the term peace quite often in the book. And peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is not the absence of, spirited conversations, but peace is having that right relationship with God and one another. And that covers a relationship. Some things I say, some things you say may be abrasive to others, but because we have a relationship, we're able to say, oh yeah, that was just, or because we have a relationship, we're able to say, hey, that's an interesting conversation that goes down the line, but this has nothing to do with salvation. And so, even if we leave disagreeing on this issue that has nothing to do with salvation, we're still good. But again, Jason, I still go back to, as much as we are connected by technology, it concerns me because now we're in a space, we don't spend a lot of time face to face. We don't spend a lot of time engaging with one another. And the way that we interact is digitally now. So if I don't like what's going on, I change the channel, I cut it off, I unfollow, I'm done. That's not how relationships are handled. You think about the people that may live in your home. Me and my wife get upset. It would be detrimental to our marriage if every time we have a heated discussion, I'll just up and leave, or she just up and like, that's not how that works. No, we got to talk about this and we got to sort it out. But because we're in this space where everything is so flippant, it does bring forth concern about heated or spirited conversations. I come from a, debating type background, so I can go and run, but I'm really grounded in relationships. And so if our relationship is good, we may disagree, we may have it. And that's what I try to foster. And you helping as well with the prayer call is like, we want to have this place where we agree that God's word is the final authority. And I may have an opinion on this or that, or they may have an opinion on this or that, but we leave on this journey together. So, yeah, with a lot of what's happening, especially in the political space, especially in even some of the religious and political space that's going on, there are these heated discussions, there are these camps, there are these tribes. We got to get back to who are we really in relationship with, and not allowing things that don't amount to a hill of beans, as my granny would say, to dissolve a real relationship.
Anthony, don't take this in the way that it's intended. You have a busy schedule. You have a lot of people to answer to. I'm glad I started with you and got to ask you a series of conversations. If you want to go on with the rest of your day, feel free to, or you can hang out and I may circle back to you, but it could be a while as I probe others. So thank you so much. Stick around if you'd
Understood.
like. If you have to move on, totally get it. Shemeka,
appreciate you.
Thank you. Shemeka, what did you think, or what's been the most interesting or maybe bone you want to pick with me from the past 2 days, or encouragement you want to give me from the past 2 days? Shemeka, go ahead.
I don't have a bone to pick with you, Jason. I actually found your opinion very interesting, especially when you talked about you didn't have a problem with what Candace was saying. You thought, but maybe her tone could have been different. I didn't have an issue with that at all. And I really liked the way that you said men were trying to hide behind this female. And that is so bothersome to me because I keep hearing people say, have we allowed her to grieve, or we have baited her out of grieving in order to respond to Candace Owens? I feel like she put herself in a position to not be able to grieve properly when she decided she would accept to be CEO of Turning Point so soon. So I don't really feel like that's on us. And I don't like the idea that because she's a grieving wife, all of a sudden no questions can be asked of Turning Point. That's ridiculous to me. And then it's also ridiculous to me when I am seeing grown men, pastors even say, mark the people who have supported Candace, get away from them. People who support Candace don't deserve to have children. I'm seeing so much ridiculousness for a woman who asks questions. And I'm saying to the name down, tattoo it on your arm, write it in your alphabet soup. I am not worried about what you have to say or what you're going to do to me about what I think or how I feel. These are just questions. And it really shows me that they are concerned more about losing followers than losing souls. Because if they were really concerned about Candace Owens, if you felt like she was in such this bad state, you would actually pray. You would put the mic down, you would put your phone down, and you would pray, and you would leave the 99 and go get the one. So all of this, she's so demonic, she's so evil, it's just foolishness to me. We have entire shows, Snap, the first 48, Fatal Attraction, where people are just asking questions, and many times you don't have an answer of who the actual killer is until the end of the show. I've never seen anyone say the creators or the producers or the people narrating the show are evil or demonic. Get away from them. What I'm watching happen right now is all a show. It's all fake and it's all rehearsed, and it is actually designed to make people shut up. And I refuse to be one of those people. She's asking questions. I don't believe that there's a clear answer on what happened to Charlie Kirk, and I am interested in getting to the bottom of it. And if you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. But the idea that anyone who does or who won't disavow her makes people angry, and there's all of this conflict and fight. What a weak stance to have. What a weak, mean girl, I sit at the popular lunch table stance to have. It's ridiculous.
I tend to agree with you. I tend to unpack it with a few degrees less temperature, but I get it, because I sit here and I say to myself, and I said on the show today, like, hey man, we've accused, conservatives have accused the Clintons of dang near every crime that's happened, any murderous crime that's happened in politics. We have speculated that the Clintons are involved, and no one seemed to care. And yeah, we have speculated that Barack Obama's wife has a penis. This is, and no one's getting called demonic or evil for that. But now that there's some speculation surrounding the assassination of a conservative political leader, and people are asking very, very uncomfortable, impolite, maybe even inappropriate questions. But I'm just saying, like, hey, where did you think this was going to go? When you're making the big Mike jokes, when you're saying the Clintons are responsible for Vince Foster and everybody else's death, you thought this would never happen to people that you actually liked? I find this mind-boggling.
Yeah, I definitely think it's mind-boggling, and I try to take my temperature down, Jason, but I think you actually pour gasoline on the fire that's already burning within me. Because you make some very good points. We have actually had these running jokes or these discussions for years, and nobody was ever demonized for it. I feel like when they put out those talking points, they went a bit too far for me. All of the she's the devil, her father is Satan. Like, what actually is she pushing or promoting that's demonic, that's evil? You know, is Candace Owens promoting the annihilation of babies in the womb? She's not. Is she telling women to forego marriage and throw that ass in a circle? She's not. Like, what is she saying that actually makes people feel like she's demonic, she's evil, and she should be ostracized or disavowed? What exactly is she saying? Because you don't like that she's asking questions, because you feel like we should just be quiet when something doesn't look right to us. What exactly is she pushing that people are labeling demonic? And so I have an issue with so many people, especially those who name the name of Christ, calling her demonic, but they sit and grab their ankle for people who don't even believe that Christ is king. It's not, I can't understand it. I can't wrap my brain around, and I'm trying to make it make sense, and it doesn't make sense to me at all. It just seems like they are being paid and they are selling out. In my opinion, the Jesus they claim saved them.
Virgil, part of my position argument today was that she's been made into a scapegoat and has allowed Christian men to not deal with the fact that, hey, how come we didn't, when Charlie Kirk was sending out signs of distress towards the end of his life, like, hey man, I'm getting a lot of pressure to disavow Tucker, to disavow Candace Owens, and I'm not gonna do it, and blah, blah, that we didn't rally around Charlie Kirk, and I don't think we've rallied around Erika Kirk. There's just no way if I were close to Erika Kirk, I wouldn't be fighting tooth and nail to run. Let me take these bullets. You don't have to answer these questions. You've got 2 kids. Those 2 kids are your legacy, are Charlie's legacy, not TPUSA. I see a failure of Christian men to stand up and to acknowledge, like, it's our job. If someone else is going to be killed as the CEO of TPUSA, it damn sure better be a man, not a grieving widow.
Yeah. Now, Jay, I completely agree with the point you made, and unfortunately, Jason, I was one of those guys early on who was kind of cheering the fact that Erika Kirk was put out there. I have to now look in retrospect and think, I don't know that was the best move to make. All of what transpired when Erika stepped into that position was happening at lightning speed. I mean, you think about it. Charlie had just died. All of us had witnessed it. And as a result, all of us have our individual approaches, feelings, thoughts, ideas about what we should be feeling, about what we should be thinking, about what people should be saying. All of that is very personal to us because of how we experienced his death. What transpired shortly thereafter, within days or no more than a week, was we saw the message that Erika gave at Charlie Kirk's podcast with the green chair. I remember that vividly, and everyone was cheering for her. Right, we were in an emotional state at that point, and as a result, of the emotion of the moment, of the feelings that we were feeling, when we heard that the board had put her in charge, we applauded that too. Many of us did. All we were thinking was, oh, Charlie's ideas will continue. And so as she kind of flexed and did her mama bear thing, not on my watch, this company will move on. We all stood up and applauded. I don't know that was the wisest decision in that moment. I think we should have paused. She should have been given months, if not more than a year, to just do nothing but sit down. And this has nothing to do with her being less than as a female, or being some weak person, or for her not to be, incapable of leading the organization. This has everything to do with the circumstances of all that transpired. And you mean to tell me that there was no one on that board, because apparently the decision was unanimous, who said, let's put her in a primary role where she's a voice, but she can be at home with those kids and do what she does from that seat, right? All of us were caught up in the emotion of what transpired, the fact that she was out there, all of that. I think in hindsight, that may not have been the smartest decision. I definitely shouldn't have been one to applaud that. I should have been one to say, let's pump the brakes on all of that. Let's hold off.
I'm going to defend you.
Sure.
I'm going to defend you in this regard. I think I don't remember saying anything because I'm just like, I don't need to be first. But I think what most people probably thought was, she's going to be CEO, but it'll probably be more ceremonial, and someone else will do the heavy lifting. Her husband just got killed in broad daylight, and she's got 2 kids. And so if they want to ceremonially put her as CEO and then have an acting person that's executed. But now, because again, now it's like, well, hold on. She's going to be traveling around doing interviews and keep a very busy schedule. And it's clear as day that the Turning Point CEO job is a life or death job. People get assassinated for taking that role. We've seen evidence of that. So I just, as it relates to the presidency, as it relates to being governor, as it relates to any of these things, and sometimes I get caught because I like some of these female political candidates. But at the end of the day, now that it's clear as day, like, no, we're killing people in these leadership positions.
Yeah.
That's not a woman's job. Because, and these are facts that people can't deny. Women have more physical fear than men. It's just the way we're wired. They got babies to take care of, they're weaker than us. And so in jobs that are life and death, I don't think it's their best. And you can put as many of them in the Army as you want to, and they're weaker soldiers. Period, end of story. I just think we thought it would be a less combative CEO role, but now she's engaged in open combat, and that's where I'm like, get her back to the back lines. The actual legacy is those two kids, not this political organization.
No, I think that's a wonderful adjustment to think through. I think about it like this, and you and I had this conversation maybe a day or so ago. There's a ministry known as Ligonier Ministry, and Ligonier is a ministry of R.C. Sproul, Dr. R.C. Sproul. For those who don't know, Dr. R.C. Sproul was just as well known in some circles as Dr. John MacArthur. And what you see in R.C. Sproul, his wife is a co-founder. She's known as the co-founder and on the board. And as a result, she has a primary speaking role into the organization. But there's a guy by the name of Chris Larson who runs the day-to-day operations and is known as the president. I guarantee you there's not a decision about the company that's made, about the organization rather, that's made, where he's not consulting her behind the scenes to see what her thoughts are, what would RC think, and there's a trust relationship. It would have been wise, I think, perhaps to have Erika in that kind of role. But I know, knowing what I do about kind of 501c3s, organizations like that, where donors are concerned, you want to shore up as quickly as you can who's running things so that donors don't take their money and head in another direction. And so as a result, I think this made sense to put her there, to put her out in front. But again, you could communicate. I'm going back and forth, Jason. I agree. I think there was a way to communicate that to the donor class to make that make sense. I'm like you as a patriarch, as a dad, as a husband, as one who wants to lead my family. I would not want my wife on the front lines taking bullets, figuratively and potentially literally, in those spaces and places that require that level of focus. All of the, I'll say this finally, all the issues related to the Candace and the back and forth, I take that with a grain of salt. I'm not as exercised about all of that back and forth as many people are, only because I've always had the mindset to if someone is lying, if there's a truth not to be told, give it enough time, and we'll know exactly what all of that is. So I don't get exercised in the back and forth. She said this. Can you believe she was on the platform and did da. I really don't. Let her say whatever she's going to say. Let's vet this out. Let's walk this out, and then we'll find out what the truth is. Time will tell that. I'm not in a rush to get all that figured out. I think we have plenty of time to see how all that plays out without vilifying and tearing one another apart in the process.
Dre, I'm sorry for taking this long to get to you. Yeah, go ahead and take a sip of water, clear your throat, take as much time as you want. Dre, what are you seeing? What's your top reaction? Are you appalled with the way Candace Owens is being treated? Are you concerned about the position Erika Kirk has been placed in? What's your top reaction?
Several things, Jason. Number one is that the space that Candace Owens is in and where we are right now is the marketplace of ideas. And my background is in sports, and I tell people this all the time. In the sports world, if you think you're the best player, you can't sit in your house and say you're the best player, or just hang in your small town and say you're the best. You have to go to where all the other good players are, and you have to prove it. And you can't duck somebody else who says they're the best. You have to go against them. Candace Owens has some ideas. She has some opinions. She has some theories. She has some whatever you want to call what she's throwing out there. If people think it's not good, she's putting it out in the marketplace of ideas. If she's wrong, then the marketplace of ideas will prove that you are wrong. If she's right, the marketplace will prove that she's right. The challenge that's happening now, and this is what you started to touch on earlier today on your show, your monologue, is that now people are coming out. This is clearly coordinated, as Shemeka referred to. It's clearly coordinated to try to shut her down and shut her up. And now they're going to the audience. Now they're saying, if you even listen to her, you're wrong. First, it was just she's wrong. Now, as if you even listen to her, you're wrong. Now they have pastors coming out, pastors who I don't know, but I see pastor in their name, and they're talking about how she's demonic, and they're using the Bible now against her. And I'm saying to them, hey, they've got you guys resorting to the last common denominator. Now you got to pull out the Bible to say that she can't say what she's saying. In the marketplace of ideas, if her ideas are wrong, come with a better idea and let the truth expose itself. Because again, truth is self-evident. As far as Erika Kirk goes, she decided to step in as CEO of Turning Point USA. She is also a grieving wife and a grieving mother. But the role of CEO, you don't get to say, hey, I'm not going to do my job as CEO because I'm a grieving wife. You decided to become CEO. There are a ton of questions being asked of your organization. You all have taken in 9 figures in donations since the death of your now past husband. There's a bunch of people asking questions, in the public asking questions. If you don't want to answer those questions, you can't say, hey, I'm a grieving wife, don't ask me any questions. The issue with the Turning Point organization, which appears to be a bunch of their most outspoken people are men. The problem with men having to follow behind a woman is that they take their lead from the boss, and the boss is a woman. And women tend to be, and this was mentioned earlier, women tend to have a lower emotional threshold before they kind of lose their control. They tend to get more defensive quickly, and they'll use their emotions as a shield to block you from a logical or objective question. Now, Erika Kirk has brought herself out in the last 2-3 weeks during her media tour, and she's shown that that's exactly who she is. She's a woman. She's a typical woman. That's not in a negative way. She's just female. The people at Turning Point USA are men. A lot of them seem to be men. Colvin, Blake Neff, these people, they're men. The problem is they are operating under feminine energy, and they're operating with feminine energy, and they're using that same feminine defensiveness against Candace. They won't have a conversation with her on Zoom because, oh, you won't come in person. If they're really exposing the truth, you don't need to do that. Let's just have a conversation, marketplace of ideas. Let's prove you wrong, shut you up, and now you have no more credibility. They won't do that because it looks like there's something that they don't want to say. So the biggest problem here, as far as your question with Candace, I don't feel sorry for her. She decided to jump into the ring, and she's dealing with it. She seems to be able to deal with it. She seems to be enjoying it, if nothing else, and she's benefiting from it. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, this is the marketplace. In the marketplace, it's show business. She's putting on a good show right now, and she's getting the business, what she deserves to get. If she's wrong, prove her wrong, have an open forum and have the discussion. I'm sure whatever Turning Point does on Monday, that's their scheduled live stream. When that happens, I'm interested to see how she responds to it and how everybody else responds to it. But in an open marketplace of ideas, if your stuff is no good, somebody else can come out and prove it. But if nobody wants to engage you directly, that should tell you something about everybody else. It doesn't say a whole lot about you.
What do you think of my analogy to the Serial podcast and how this feels no different? It's just a true crime podcast that's been popularized not by Candace Owens, but by the marketplace and the podcast industry and television. What do you think of, is there any hole in that analogy that I've made that, like, hey, we were perfectly fine with this Sarah Koenig and the New York Times and making money off Adnan Syed and Haymin Lee and never proving whether Jay did it? I don't know. Are you familiar with Serial? Never proving who did it. Just asking a bunch of questions. Is that a sound analogy?
You know what I compared it to was R. Kelly's Trapped in the Closet. Remember when he just kept going and he just kept coming up with new episodes of that? It reminds me of that. If you want to make fun of it. I don't think that's what Candace is doing. I don't think she's stressing it out just for the hell of it. But you got to understand, people are giving her material. They're providing her material to keep going. And Erika Kirk, what she's done this past week, just provided Candace another, 60 to 90 days of content. So they're feeding right into it by playing this game. But at the same time, they're touching on it, but not coming all the way in. If they come all the way into the ring and they prove that she's wrong in the marketplace of ideas, she will have no choice but to shut up. But because they won't answer the questions, because they keep dodging her and ducking her, all they're doing is feeding it. And then you get all the paid influencers. Turning Point's taking in all this money. I don't know what they're doing with it. It looks like they're paying influencers. These big name influencers keep coming out and bashing her, saying the same things at the same time every day. All it's doing is giving her more material, and she seems to have the internal fortitude to deal with it. I appreciate what she's doing. She's asking the questions. And the last thing I'll say here, Jason, is that a lot of people on the political right who are bashing Candace, they're sounding like people on the left during COVID. That's what they're sounding like. You got to be a fool to question the vaccine. Why would you not put a mask on? You're about to kill grandma. Oh, what is wrong with you? We got to remember all these people who aren't
socially distance yourself from Candace. Socially distance yourself from Candace.
Exactly.
That's what they're asking.
That sounds crazy to me.
Yeah, Yeah, it's the same. The COVID analogy I made briefly, I think one other time, but yeah, that your people are being demanded, and you're evil if you don't socially distance. Don't you know you're putting other people in harm's way if you don't socially distance? The other, Dre, I get this response from you. The other reason why I think they're going after Candace is because none of them really want to go after Tucker Carlson because they know they will get annihilated. And so Candace is a softer target. It's a woman. She's not as well liked in the conservative media space as Tucker. And so I see they're ducking Muhammad Ali, actually, so that they can fight, some knockoff version of, and again, I'm not trying to denigrate Candace, but she's a woman. Pick on a woman rather than Tucker Carlson, to me, is the real killer here. And I don't even mean that in a negative way. It's just he's proven. Oh, you come for me? I'll come for you in a real way. And so everybody looks tough beating up Candace, but they're ducking the fight with Tucker.
Absolutely. And several other things with Candace. First of all, she's female. Secondly, she's black. Third, she's married to a white guy. Fourth, she has distanced herself from Donald Trump and MAGA. Fifth, she has challenged the Jews. And all of these things make her an easy target. Six, she's put out so much material that she's offered a whole bunch of targets. So she offers herself as a target for all of those reasons. There's hardly anything when we're talking mainstream conservative that is quote unquote redeeming about Candace right now. So she's a very easy target. And when everybody else is ganging up on her, it doesn't take any courage to throw a punch.
Anthony, I'm going to come back to you if you're still here. I started out earlier this week leaning into my patriarchal worldview and that, like, hey, man, $100 million political organization. We've seen the CEO killed. This isn't a woman's role or job. People have to come up out of the delusion, turn off the Equalizer, turn off Netflix and all the TV shows that say there's a woman king and that women are going to save you, and they're the same type of leaders as men. From a biblical perspective, I'm saying, like, hey, God intended for there to be male authority, male leadership. We've got a lot of women overextended. Am I wrong? Have I said something inaccurate, inappropriate? Am I not recognizing that there are great women in the Bible who, all would be qualified to run TPUSA and should be running TPUSA? Have I missed the boat here?
The perspective that you have is a biblical one, that men should lead. The problem is we have set up our society around trying to make everything and everybody equal. And yes, in God's eyes, men and women are equal in value, but they're different in function, different in what he's called them to do. And so the fact, could a woman be in that role? Yes, she could, but should she? I don't think so. And so from a biblical space, no. I think you make a very good point. Just literally, we've seen, as you said, the person who was in this seat before her was assassinated for his ideas and for expressing them. And now we're going to put her in that role. That was not the best idea. It was not. And so, yeah, you make a very valid point.
Virgil, you're my resident biblical bully. I want you to chime in on that aspect as well. Not to put you in a hot spot, but we're kidding ourselves. Man just got murdered. Let's put his grieving wife with two young kids, not two kids that are in their 20s. Yeah, let's put this woman on the firing line. This is insanity.
I don't disagree. There's nothing that Pastor Anthony said that I disagree with. I think he's spot on, and all that he laid out, and the fact that men are positioned to lead. We're in a culture, we're in a society that's incredibly feminized, that has imbibed this egalitarian perspective, and so as a result, you decisions like that are applauded rather than really looked at and scrutinized. Decisions like putting a woman in that role in that position of danger are applauded rather than scrutinized and really thought through. And again, it has little to do with her capabilities or her effectiveness as a female or the, you know, her level of education. She's incredibly well educated. So none of those issues are at play. It's just the practical issue of, should a woman be put in the front lines as men who are protectors, patriarchs, who should be standing up and making sure that women are covered in the ways that God has designed us to do. We should ask those questions, and in my estimation, really should have thought through the decision for her to take such a leadership role. I go back to what you said, and I thought you laid that out incredibly well, which is, you know, perhaps she's in the CEO role, but it's a step back from front lines, right? It's not where she's out doing a publicity tour. She's got babies at home, man, and they just lost their dad. And every interview that I've watched, and I've not seen all of them, but she's still on the verge of tears at the very mention of her husband's name, and that alone should say, let's let her go home and grieve. If we've got to either do one of two things: either A, let her go home and grieve, or B, she don't have to. Shemeka said it: step up and be the CEO and take the firing shots. I'm calling my sister Shemeka Shabazz today, because she kind of put on the she kind of went all in on it. But I think we've got to consider those things as well.
But Virgil, you know, you think about it, and I think this goes to Dre's point. One of the other things that makes it difficult, though, is because she is his wife and because she's in that role, then everybody has to be kid gloves, because, you know, but if you're the CEO, you're the CEO.
Right.
And so I'm with you. Like, she needs to, if I would say this, I would not say be a ceremonial CEO, because then that devalues the position. Either we're not going to do it, and still have her involved. If she's the face of the organization, that says everything that needs to know, and it's run by these men over here.
Yeah, I'll say this and land the plane. I agree with both you, Anthony, and Dre on that. My thing is simply this: we've got to draw the line somewhere. If we're gonna, and Jason laid this out, if we're Christian men holding to a Christian worldview in a Christian space, right, where we're conservatives, what are we conserving if we're not conserving male headship, male leadership, right? What are we conserving? And again, nobody's calling me. I mean, I know a lot of folks over at TPUSA. Nobody's calling me to ask me what I think about these issues. So, you know, they've made their decisions. They'll stick by them and they'll walk them out. But I think there's a real conversation for all of us who are in this space to have about, you know, these female leads, females who are out in the front lines on podcasts and in other spaces taking bullets. I really do.
So, Anthony, Virgil, or Shemeka, hop in here. Help me out from a biblical perspective. To me, it feels like TPUSA is being set up as a sacred cow, a golden calf, an idol. That, hey man, we've got to do everything we can to protect TPUSA. And so, are there organizations in the Bible that became so important that we had to protect them and treat them as an idol? Because I'll say it all in one, and then whoever hop in, whatever. But I'm also even looking at, and this is where it's like, you need a CEO and you need a man and you need someone really grounded in faith to say, I get her desire. She went on an interview and was telling Harris Faulkner about this museum and shrine that they're building for Charlie Kirk. And I was sitting there like, I get it. She's his wife. She wants blah, blah, blah. But as a leader, particularly of something that's attached itself to biblical faith, I don't want to set up Charlie Kirk as an idol. Right. I don't want some new shrine built to Charlie Kirk. And this is a mistake. It's a wife's desire and it's appropriate. But as the leader of TPUSA and you want to attach yourself to faith, let's don't turn the organization or Charlie Kirk into an idol. That's a mistake. But maybe there are things in the Bible that I'm unfamiliar with where things outside of Jesus were so important that we had to protect at all costs.
And I'll jump in here, and Anthony can clean up my mess if I mess if I mess this up. It was John Calvin who said that the heart of man is capable of turning anything into an idol. We can do that with near about anything, and do if we're not careful. And surely that could be the case in this instance. I'm not saying that it is, but that's definitely a possibility, and we have to guard against that. We have to guard against doing that. I get wanting to set this up as a shrine. I'm 35 minutes sitting here with you. I'm 35 minutes from TPUSA's campus, from where I'm sitting right now. And so you go by there, there's pictures and images, large as life, of Charlie Kirk's face, and people memorializing his death and what took place there. So I totally get what's happening there, and a wife's decision to want to do that. I think this AmFest that we're about to have here in a couple of weeks is going to be a great pointing back to the work of Charlie Kirk. And I think there's rightness about that in honoring his life and what he designed. There is always with that the challenge that you have of putting something up as an idol and promoting it to the degree that people are begin to believe there's no questioning of this organization because it is now sacred. And I think that's when that happens, we've definitely gone too far.
Yes, sir. You did very well there. Jesus, or God, however you want to phrase it here, God established two organizations, if you will, two entities, two things that he wanted to use to exact his will into his creation: marriage and the church. And when we look at what he does, what Paul does, Jason, you were in the prayer call the last couple of weeks in Ephesians chapter 5, he puts both of those together and saying, hey, husbands, here's how you ought to be to your wife. Wives, here's how you ought to be to your husbands. And actually, guys, I'm really talking about Christ and the church. So again, they're linked. Outside of those two things, there's no other kind of organization that we are called biblically to protect, or entity biblically that we are to protect. But it is our tendency to make idols, as Virgil just pointed out. And so we will create a Superman who is has all these great attributes and all these things to look to him to save the city. No, Christ is supposed to save us. We will create these organizations that have even biblical ideals and say, man, that is so good. Got it. And you may have that, but it does not replace Christ and the church. And so it can support, it can help, but it does not replace it. So any questions as it relates to, the financing or decisions made, et cetera, you may ask from that perspective.
Dre, I want to give you a final thought, then I'm going to let Shemeka close out the show. Anything you want to add or didn't get to say?
Charlie Kirk was willing to engage directly. And for people to say that, hey, Candace Owens is desecrating Charlie Kirk's legacy by asking questions of Turning Point USA doesn't logically make any sense, but it makes a lot of emotional sense. And I tell people that emotions overpower logic 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. And right now, a lot of people are using the emotional frame to try to pull the rug out from under Candace because they don't want her asking the questions. And anytime I see anyone or any group of people not wanting to answer a question and using an emotional frame to avoid the logic, it tells me that something is not being said. I don't know what that is. That's what Candace has been trying to get at. And then people straw man that by saying, well, she isn't saying exactly what it is. But again, as Shemeka mentioned, people do investigations first. We get the answer later. You don't get proof until you get into a court of law. That's adjudication. But the investigation is done by the investigators. And that's all she's doing.
Shemeka, you got any thoughts? Take as long as you want.
I would just say, Jason, that I feel like the reason why a lot of these men are hiding behind Erika is because they have skeletons in their closet and they don't want to be accountable. I think when Charlie Kirk died, it really left many of them vulnerable, and they put this crying woman out because they knew it would pull on the heartstrings of people. And I actually think that it's making things worse by putting her out there. Many of us are not falling for it, and we're not moved by the tears. If they wanted us to be moved, maybe they should have called in Julia Roberts. I don't know. But we're just not moved by it. And so I think it was a bad idea. I do not think she is capable, not even bringing in the grieving aspect of it. I just don't think that she's capable, any woman is capable of being a dynamic CEO of such a large organization and being a dynamic mother of small children. It's just a really hard job. And I saw a lot of women coming at you for saying that a woman should not be in this position. But many times women, we lie. And we like to pretend that we're super women and it's so easy. We can be a perfect wife, a perfect mom, a perfect boss bee, and it's just not real. And I want women to stop lying and pretending like we can do it all. We can't. And, you know, that's why so many of them, in my opinion, are CMEs, only making love to their husbands Christmas, Mother's Day, and Easter, because it's just hard to do all of those things at one time. And so when it comes to someone that's grieving, when you bring in the grief aspect of it, she just shouldn't be out here on the front lines at all, period. And I think it's too much for her to carry. I think it was irresponsible for someone to put that on her, and she probably felt some type of pressure. Regardless of the skepticism of people say how she feels about Charlie or whatever, she's a mom. And at the end of the day, those children should be her first priority above Turning Point USA, above trying to address Candace. Being a mom is a full-time job. It's a big responsibility, and it's enough all by itself.
Shemeka, Virgil, Anthony, Dre, thank you guys so much. You guys enjoy your weekend. Audience, you enjoy your weekend. We'll see you next time.
Up so divided, stop fighting and stand tall. We used to be a nation, one united. Now we're headed for downfall.